everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Limelight Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm here as usual with Dr. Sloan, and today we are going to talk about some Lyme testing information. We're also going to talk about stem cells. So without further ado, hi, Dr. Sloan.
Hi, Maddie. Happy week to you.
Happy week. Happy end of the week. I'm glad this week is coming to a close.
It's been a tumultuous week. I think we feel it. I think the stress of everybody can feel it, and then our patients can definitely feel it. It was one heck of a week, but time moves on. So we'll have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Y'all, de-stress. It's all fine. And, heading into the weekend, we can get some people some good information to start their weekend.
That's right. We can get some knowledge out there, and I'm sure everybody will be Googling this great information we have now.
Yes. So I know that you want to talk a little bit more. We've had a couple of previous episodes. I think episode 2 was a big Lyme testing episode. So for anybody that hasn't heard that episode, that was before we were doing it on video, but you can go listen to it. So that's a really good one to check out if you haven't heard that one before. But now you want to go a little bit more in depth with Lyme testing specifics. So let's get into that.
Yes. So there is a lot of misinformation going on out there in the world. We have a lot of doctors, practitioners that want to get on the Lyme bandwagon. And I just want to offer a sense of you guys be a little bit careful about who you choose as your practitioner and make sure that they have a good bit of Lyme literacy for you to choose them and trust them. This office and I am a functional medicine, integrative medicine practitioner. We are not an SOT clinic. We treat patients for a wide variety of illnesses by truly finding the root of that illness. We want to find a target. If we don't find a target, then we're chasing rabbits. And every time when you get back to your practitioner every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, if they say to you, okay, now let's try this. And now let's try this. And now let's try this. You're just chasing rabbits. So the foundations of Lyme testing or vector disease testing should be somewhat as follows. The company that we chose to use is a company that is the oldest company in the United States for vector disease tests. So I want to open up the idea of vector diseases. You're not just walking in the door looking for Lyme disease, because there are other diseases that mimic Lyme. The company that we use, everything on that list, which is about 3.5 pages of bugs, all can mimic the signs and symptoms of Lyme. So that's why we use that. So you have to be very comprehensive up front and get all of your information. I really will stick to my laurels and my science about the order of importance of these things. So if we do find Lyme disease and we treat it accordingly, SOT or other treatments, then we also know what other vectors are in your body that may mimic Lyme. So I will say the science of an SOT is 100% specific. Each person's blood, and I will be posting some new information from RGCC with an explanation of antisense that they have kind of revised a little bit. I think everybody will like that. But once we do an SOT, and maybe we're not getting the results we want, or maybe we are, the SOT is so scientific that every single person's Borrelia RNA sequence, there's 150 blocking potentials they start with for each person. And through sensitivity and validation studies, then they find the one that's best for the patient. They try really, really hard. So it's right. Is it 100%? It's probably not 100%, but it's probably really dang close. And if you're not getting the results you're looking for, then I can pull back out your original data and say, oh, by the way, though, well, you have Yersinia. So that may be causing some Yersinia arthritis, and your HHV6 is high. There's a little anaplasma showing up, and after this, we really need to investigate Bartonella, because there's better and further testing we can do for those. Borrelia, Bartonella, and Babesia, they're right there. They're the, that's kind of the order of importance for us. So this is kind of like a buyer beware, but just remember that we're going to stick with foundations. And every time you come in, we're not going to try something new. It's going to be foundation work, testing, accurate treatment, getting targets taken care of, and then we're going to move along. Sorry that was so long.
Well, basically, and I know that you describe yourself like this often, and you're a detective. And, so you're not kind of shifting around in the dark, just trying to hit symptoms of whatever symptoms are popping up for somebody this week or the next week. You're going through and methodically checking, what type of bugs are we dealing with? What type of issues are they causing? And you're kind of going through, a system of getting rid of what is going to cause people the most issue. And with Lyme, it's right. The reason why that's your first guy you go to is because that is preventing the immune system from being able to, maybe get rid of some of these other bugs on its own. But if it's not, then you move on to treating those next.
Yes. And next on the list of tests, we now have been informed that we have SOTs for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 Borrelia species.
Well, I think, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I kind of want to throw this out for everyone to hear. People often question, okay, well, how do you know that Borrelia burgdorferi is that genetically modified one? How do you know that it affects the immune system? First of all, if you guys haven't read the book Bitten by Chris Newby, you should. It's a great book. Explains a lot of this information. There's also some studies that do show that Borrelia burgdorferi does hinder the immune system production in rats. And I will find that study and share that for you guys.
There's tremendous studies on the effects of the immune system. Yes.
Yeah. But, just even looking at, you have Borrelia burgdorferi, which is a spirochete. You have syphilis, which is a spirochete. If you get syphilis, you can treat that very easily with antibiotics, and it's not really a big deal. We don't have people dying left and right from syphilis anymore. So the question is, if it's the same type of bacteria, why do people suffer with chronic Lyme disease for years and years and decades? Whereas with syphilis, it's very, almost identical. It's the same type of bacteria, and you can get rid of that in a few weeks of an antibiotic. So, sure. Just with that evidence alone, and, if you've experienced chronic Lyme, that, the 2 weeks of doxy isn't doing it for you.
An interesting fact is that laboratory scientists will call syphilis a bacteria. Laboratory scientists will call Borrelia a virus.
Interesting.
When we check on the list to get a treatment from RGCC, it is a viral condition. It is, I forget exactly how they list it, but it is a virus. They list it as a virus. If I call it a bacteria, especially into their face, they kind of laugh at me because, yes, we do have a bacteria genetically, but as everybody knows, it's virulent. It's virulent. So why don't antibiotics work? Because it's virulent. Why don't antibiotics work? Because they don't use antibiotics that break down biofilm. I feel comfortable that if I get an early case of Lyme, which I never do, but if I can get a patient that's been bitten and I can give them lipophilic antibiotics, which we have a great combination now that we have compounded and a pharmacy's making it. I really feel like we can do some good work there. But also some antifungals need to be given because the Borrelia burgdorferi Western blot. If you look on your piece of paper, it says Borrelia B, B31, outer surface protein A and B. So it's testing your immune response to the outer surface protein A and B, which is actually a fungal ball.
Right.
So it's very interesting. RGCC does a TEC1 16S genotype amplification for Borrelia burgdorferi. We don't do that in America. There's one lab that says they do it, and I'm working with them, but so far I've had no positives at all. So it's just we're still in question with it.
So is that similar to a PCR test?
Yeah, it's a PCR test, but it's amplified. So the genetics of Borrelia are viral-like. They're very, very, very tiny. So that small oligonucleotide that they're looking for is very small. And we do not do amplification of PCR in America. As you know, the companies, LabCorp, Quest, they all do PCRs, but they're never ever positive, no matter how bad the Lyme is. Once in a while, I've seen the PCR, and it's kind of really cool because they found genetics on the first pass. But there's one company that does a urine test that looks for an amplified PCR, but patients don't do all the upfront things, then the test isn't valid. So everybody can't do the same things to ensure that it's going to be a standardized test at the end of the day.
So I feel like maybe this is all getting very technical, and I want to maybe just go back a few steps and explain even what we're looking for when we're testing, and maybe why you're not getting the positive results on those genetic amplification type tests. Can you explain that a little better?
As in, what do you mean? Like, why don't we get a positive on an American PCR test?
Just like why, like what the test actually does, and like what it is that we're looking for in order to qualify it as a positive or a negative test.
The Western blot is an antibody test, so we're looking at your immune system reaction to the bug.
The fungal ball specifically, right?
Fungal ball, the outer surface protein. Yep. And I have some pictures on our Facebook group that demonstrate the little fungal flares. And then I enjoy working with the lab we work with because we get a band intensity. So LabCorp and Quest show only bands that are CDC criteria.
Right.
There are other bands there that they don't show because they don't do a dimension, they don't do a number system. So we're able to see the patients that have fallen through the cracks that are in between the left hump and the right hump. We call it the trough, and that's where the chronic Lyme is. But
so you're looking for the immune response, the antibodies from the immune markers of the response to the fungal balls. So you really have to be in that kind of ideal situation where the Lyme is in your body, it's fighting against your immune system, so it's producing the fungal balls, and your immune system is then creating antibodies in response to those outer surface proteins.
Right. And that's why heavily antibiotic treated patients have very low bands.
Because it's suppressing everything.
Suppressing. So the antibiotic treatments will typically make it go into a biofilm,
right.
Or it makes it go kind of dormant, or there's dormancy, there's persisters. And we've talked about this before. A persister form is only a persister form when exposed to things like antibiotics because it's hiding. If you're not on them, there are no persisters. There may be some dormant ones, but all phases go through different phases. They're not all dormant.
Well, I also want to say, there's been a little bit of misconception that I've seen that this like persister form, or like once it's in a biofilm or it's dormant, it no longer has a metabolism. I've seen that happen, people talking about that, which is not true, because while it's in the fungal ball, or not the fungal ball, in the biofilm, it still is taking nutrients in and producing toxins. So it's like it's created a little house for itself, but that house still has plumbing, and
Yes.
it's things are still going in and things are still coming out. Those toxins are still coming out and going into your body.
It's not dead.
Right.
So it's got to have resources from outside of itself. And SOT molecules are so tiny. They're the tiniest of molecules that we've ever been able to make. We can't see them with a microscope. They have to be synthesized. So they go through it, like I say, like light through a window. There's nothing in the way. They don't even literally need capillary flow. They can go through cells. I mean,
Right.
it's just they're right through the whole body very quickly.
And then continue what you were going to say. Sorry.
No, please.
What I was going to say, is just in finding, I want to talk a little bit more about how they determine what your SOT is and the blocking and the 150, I'm picturing it in my head. I've seen the little chart. And they are, I guess, I'm going to totally butcher this, but they're going through and they're amplifying your specimen to try to find your RNA for your bug. And then they're running it through this system where they're testing it against 150 different options and then picking the one that is going to work best for the bug that's in your body.
Yes. May I digress for a second? It's 24 species of Lyme disease is what they say here on this document. But as I know it, officially Lyme disease is only burgdorferi.
Right.
The other spirochetal diseases are considered Lyme-like illnesses because they don't quite fit the bill for this new genetically modified bacterium that is a humongous weapon. We will be posting this for everyone to read. Yes, so when we document that we want the lab to look for Borrelia burgdorferi, they are sequencing Borrelia burgdorferi RNA, and they're amplifying that and they actually have a number system. They can tell how far they had to dig to find it. And if they dig too low, then it's not worth it. But RGCC only accepts test results from a patient that we are very, very, very sure they have Lyme. So they're not running the blood just to test it for a Borrelia bacteria. They are testing to make a treatment.
Right, because they're not a testing company. They're not trying to determine whether or not you have Lyme. They're trying to determine what the specific RNA strand is in your Lyme.
Yes. They do have a testing company in London called Biofilms that does the prime spot and the Poldy spot. The Poldy spot is relatively new. We have run a few of those. We found some interesting things. We found a Duncani when I couldn't find a Duncani, and another Kurtenbach, Borrelia Kurtenbach. I don't know much about it, but they make an SOT for it, or we can treat it. It's interesting. So we're getting into a new layer of tests, laboratory tests that I think we will find exciting. They're fairly expensive. That's why I still like my foundations of treatment, because I want to look at all the possible vector diseases that may be Lyme-like in the way they present symptoms, whether you do or do not have Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi. Then I still know the other things that are in there. So when we do take care of the bad guy, we move him away and we start moving the bugs off the plate, then I'm looking at a patient that is now bug free. Hopefully they show that symptomatically, and they usually do. We're over 600 SOTs and less than 30 people twice. It's not because I don't want, we can do more. It's just that when we move through the bug world, we get to see the Lyme sequence and all for the most part. And then we go after the other things. And people get confused and my Lyme is back or my Lyme symptoms are the same. And after SOT, I kind of look at you like you don't have Lyme Borrelia anymore. We're looking at the other parts of the puzzle, and there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
Right. Well, I mean, even, just with my experience, when after I got my SOT, a few weeks after, getting the SOT, I went through a period of feeling really bad. And I called you and I was like, I feel really bad. What's going on? And, you went and looked at my chart and you were like, oh, you have mycoplasma and, we're going to treat that next. And as soon as I started treating the mycoplasma, then within just a few days, everything was fine. But I think my body had kind of adjusted to the number of bugs that was in it. And as soon as the Lyme started to kind of, the scale started to tip and I started experiencing symptoms from a different bug that I didn't even know that I had because I hadn't been symptomatic for it before.
So you're seeing your immune system wake up.
Right.
So what we're finding is scientifically, possibly Lyme is gone in 2 to 6 weeks. When patients have that immune system response, like, oh my goodness, now I'm more histaminic. Oh, guess what? Your immune system woke up. Now my Epstein-Barr feels flary. Guess what? Your immune system woke up. If your immune system wakes up, it can only be because Borrelia has been sequestered and the immune responses are coming back on. One of the biggest responses is that Lyme is so immunosuppressive. You can see on the graph how many things I wrote there: T cells, lymphocytes, NK cell functions. We all know we check natural killer cell functions just as a variant to see where we start, and we can measure it to see how well we're doing. But once we get into those immune responses, usually like 6 to 10 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, we're really happy that we're seeing your immune system come back on. And it is going through a process that is 100% necessary.
Right.
We don't want it not to happen. We want a recovered immune system, which would be your immune system that you're supposed to have without a warfare bug in your body. And then after that, we get into that's why I retest, and I'm a thorough retester. And 3 to 4 months, we're looking at more stuff and making sure you're feeling better. And then we get into our healing phases and recovery phases. We get into some adrenal stuff, and everybody wants to have more energy. So we work on a lot of things: sleep and adrenals, thyroid. And then we may offer your body some assistance with healing. And that's when we start talking about stem cells. And they're fascinating.
Well, that's a really good segue. I do want to say we're going to talk about stem cells. But I want to say, something that I think is, years and years ago, it was very hard to get diagnosed with Lyme. Now it's almost a little too easy sometimes with some functional doctors, or, Lyme literate doctors that kind of blanket everything with, oh, it's Lyme. But I've never met a single person or talked to a single person ever, and I've talked to a lot of people with Lyme, no one's ever had just Lyme, and that it's only Lyme, and Lyme is the only thing that's wrong with them. There is always just a soup pot of, co-infections, candida, hormonal issues, thyroid, adrenal, dietary things. Like there's so many things. So I think it's really important for people to prioritize, when you're fighting Lyme, it's not just the one bacteria that you're trying to get rid of. It's you're healing your whole body, and there's a lot of factors. So you have to make sure that you're working with somebody who knows more than just about Lyme disease. They know about the whole body, all of these different bugs, and how to go through this sequence of figuring out what all is there so you can get rid of everything.
Yeah, we are a bug bucket.
Bug bucket.
We have over 500 trillion parts and pieces of viral DNA in the human body, and we only have 10 trillion cells. We constantly shed viral DNA. It's part of the way God made us, because that shedding of viral DNA keeps our immune system strong. You put somebody in a bubble, and they're going to have a very, very weak immune system, which is probably happening now. We're already seeing the flu come through.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
can't even
in
imagine.
here in my family, true bona fide influenza. And I've never seen it this early,
Yeah.
ever. But
I
some,
definitely think we're in for a rough cold
yes,
and flu season because we've all been keeping, preventing our immune systems from kind of like working out. It's like your immune system hasn't experienced or seen any other viruses or, challenges for this
yes.
whole year. So now you're kind of entering into this typical, we live in a world of viruses and bugs and all kinds of things. And now we're kind of just like, I think we're in for a tough cold and flu season. And maybe we
So
should do an episode about that. How to,
we have to get prepared now. And we're really pushing our high dose vitamin C IVs, for curative and prophylactic responses so that we can stay strong and healthy. And then we have a little protocol as well. But going back to what you're talking about is the way that there's never a Lyme patient with just one bug.
right.
So let's digress and say, well, some people get along just fine with Lyme. I have tested spouses with LabCorp that have all 3 IgM bands and no symptoms. Why? So, it is lifestyle, it is genetics, there's so many things to go into it. Maybe a Lyme patient is a Lyme patient because their body can't do anything with this bug, and other people can.
Right.
So when you sit down with us, we're looking at that. We're looking at everything. So I agree that it's just if we can't deal with the simple things, like when I find a 50-year-old that still looks like they have Epstein-Barr and HHV6 and mycos like they should look like when they're a teenager, then we know something's really up. Even if they don't test well for Lyme, they probably have it because something is messing up their immune system.
Right.
To a point where they're in a lot of disarray.
Well, that's, I think, why it's so important to look at everyone as an individual, because everyone's got an individual set of, not only what is infecting them, but also genetics, lifestyle, and, medical history. So it's important to, and this actually brings me to a good point that I wanted to talk about too. There's so many different things that it's really impossible for you, especially as the patient, to kind of be able to juggle all of that. So I think really what you have to do is prioritize finding a doctor or practitioner that you really trust, that you really agree with, that really will listen to you. And then you just have to really just trust them. And it's hard, there's been, I also don't come across too many Lyme patients that haven't experienced some form of medical malpractice. So it's really hard to kind of just let go and trust that a doctor is really gonna take care of you. But then, you end up getting in a situation where then you're second guessing everything and you're maybe not following a protocol that you really should be following, or you just are getting really stressed out about it. And that doubt and that stress is also going to prevent you from healing. So you really just have to find someone that you trust, and then you just got to kind of put your blinders on and you got to listen, and you got to just follow your protocol. You got to kind of block out the noise from what people are saying on the internet, and just do what is working for you, and keep going with the plan.
Yes. When someone leaves an office and we have a game plan and they feel really comfortable and I have a lot of hope, and a few weeks after dealing with social media and listening to misinformation, then we're going back again. We're repeating what we repeated before. They're getting caught up in the media hype, and it's very hard for us to stay focused with it.
Well, your mindset is
important.
key. Yeah. And I think, like I was just saying earlier, for me, I never allowed myself to think that SOT wasn't going to work. I trust you 100%. So, and I honestly didn't really even do as much research as maybe I would have, in the past. Cause I trust you, and I looked it up. I was like, this looks really cool. Let's do it. And then I did it, and I never looked back. And I just trusted that my body was going to handle it. I believed in the science. I believed in you. And I started feeling really good pretty fast. I had those couple of weeks where most people kind of have that immune system waking up. You may be a little histaminic. But then I started feeling really good right away. And I've never slipped back. I've never had any recurring issues. And it's been pretty amazing. But it's also such a big part of my mindset where I just have decided now that I'm going to be healthy. And I, put that kind of positive force into my healing, and it's really paid off. And, you tend to see the people who have faith and have hope and, are kind of in that fight to just, they know they're going to get better. And they don't doubt themselves. They don't doubt the person that they're working with. Those are the people that get better right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people have been sick for so long that their identity is so wrapped up in the illness that they can't see out of it. And I understand that, because it's hard to know what normal is when you haven't been normal for so long.
Right.
And then we have to kind of put on our hope hat. And once I can show on paper that we're moving bugs out of the way, wow, it makes a really big difference for the mental attitude and the psyche of a patient, that they can see it and it's shifting and it's changing. And yes, I feel this way. Maybe I feel good. Maybe I don't feel good yet. But even for the ones that feel better, still have post-traumatic stress, Lyme disease, PTSD.
Right.
And it's for every few weeks that you're better and you're not regressing, then you desensitize naturally to that trauma of going through the illness. I'm not going to call out her name, but there's a fantastic testimonial on the Lyme, on TGC Lyme Information Group, that's fairly recent, for a patient that had a really hard struggle, as hard as anybody would have a struggle with Lyme disease and other infections. And it's really neat to see her journey when she got to a point and she finally realized, like, I think I'm getting better. And that switch went off. And then she started doing the things that she needed to do to take care of her part, which is, I call it the physical therapy part. I'm not here to heal anybody. And you give me credit where I'll appreciate it. But, I just feel like I've dug up the world and looked under every rock I really didn't plan that. I've looked under every rock to find out the best way to treat my patients, because I want to be treated that way.
Right.
And that's rule number one for me. It's always, I want you to treat me like I'm going to treat you, vice versa. So I feel like that we've just got the best test available. We've got a system together. I'm not trying something new every time you come in. We have to take care of Borrelia, then we have to move along. I'd love to go faster, but we have to honor the immune system functions and the sequences of the body as it needs to adjust. We have done multiple SOTs, kind of in a row for patients who want to do that. Does it work any better? I don't know. I think our system works well. So people may be jumping off the bandwagon, going to this new thing or that new thing. I don't know all the new things. I don't want to know tangents. I'm not going to chase rabbits around with my patients. We just end up wasting time and money.
Right.
But thank you for the credit, but I'm just doing good tests. I appreciate RGCC for making a treatment that we can trust, and it's so scientific that there's no.
Right. Well, I think,
sensitive with it.
There's definitely a time of not only healing physically, but also just kind of getting your head right and recognizing that, like you do probably have some trauma and PTSD from dealing with this. I know I certainly did. And it is hard to kind of unravel yourself and find out who you are as a person after dealing with this for years. So I think people just also need to recognize that you kind of have to be patient with yourself, and that takes time to get through and get over. And, you will get better, you will get through it, but you just got to be kind of patient with your body. And I think that brings us into a good point of, physically healing, of talking about stem cells, because I know that that's something that you recommend to people, kind of after they've gone through this, where you've kind of cleared everything out and now you're ready to kind of go, okay, well, what damage has been done from having these variety of bugs, boring through your tissues for however many years. So tell us a little bit more about what stem cells even are, because this is something that I really don't know about very much,
Sure.
and how you use them to heal people.
Sure. Once I'm moving bugs off the plate and you see the bugs moving off the plate, and then we get to that mark where we can say you're basically bug free, at least for vectors. But why do I still feel this tingle? Why do I still have this? My Cyrex shows brain antibodies. So, for a lot of my neuro patients, we're doing the Cyrex test so we can look at brain antibodies before we move along. Haven't seen one improve after an SOT though, just for the record. But there is a certain level. I talked to a patient yesterday she's been a patient of mine for probably 15 years. She's done a couple of SOTs. Her MRI shows demyelinization, and she has neurological symptoms related to MS. So bugs are gone, but I'm left with this damage in my body. We can feel confident now to say, well, I've tested you thoroughly enough. I don't think there's any bugs left, so let's go heal some damage. And the stem cell method that we use is from a Nobel Prize laureate, 2012. They changed the research on stem cells forever by figuring out how to take your own stem cells out of your body and revert them back to embryonic.
Cool.
So a stem cell is a cell in the body stored in bone marrow and your fat. When you're injured, whether you feel it or not, if you sprain your ankle, you feel it. If you have slow decline in neurological symptoms, you don't feel your brain hurt. Some people do, but you don't feel damage in certain areas because it's signaling in a way that we don't necessarily feel. It's an autonomic response. So stem cells in the body go and attach to that tissue and repair it to create new tissue. When we have too much stuff to fix or we have damage that we need to fix, then we can take your blood, send it to the lab. They take the stem cells out of your blood. They remove the DNA that made it have a target. Now it reverts it back to an embryonic-like cell. And then they preserve the telomere in the cell. So now it doesn't have an aging cycle.
Cool.
So then they grow them for 2 weeks, and then they scoop them up and they send us the live cells, and we put them in the patient. Our doctors can inject them into pain areas, as well as the purpose here is to put them in the vein and let them go through the body with a large bolus of very active stem cells and let them go through from head to toe and fix damage that is signaling for help.
Wow.
Injuries that get old, like a knee injury that's over 3 months old, isn't signaling a signal anymore to get repaired. So when we can inject that, we injure it, we signal it, and then the stem cells can go repair it. But this is the most revolutionary process for stem cells. You go to Mexico or Puerto Rico, you're gonna be charged a whole lot of money for somebody else's cells in your body. But now we can use our own cells, and we can put our own cells back in our body. And one of the interesting fact about the telomeres, we know we can measure telomeres for anybody, and we can see how well your cell is aging compared to your age. So I need to send you a kit for that. We can see how old you really are.
I don't want to know.
This stem cell treatment has been tested by us and others for years. I've done 2 of them. Your
Personally.
second, yes, I've done 2 personally. I'm anti-aging. Need to grow some hair. The stem cells, when we do the second one, your count is 50 to 100% higher than it was the first time a year later.
Why is that?
Because the ones we put in are still active and they're growing
So,
and developing.
so do they, because you're removing those aging telomeres, did they basically, I mean, how long do they stay in your body?
They create new stem cells in the body that make new stem cells.
So I mean, you're literally anti-aging and you're putting yourself biologically kind of in a phase where you'd be like a small child that's growing a lot of tissue.
Well, what we're doing is fighting the degenerative process as much as we can. So we're still aging, but we're aging less fast.
Okay.
We're correcting, we're all in a state of degeneration to die of something other than natural causes at this point. So they fix heart cells, they fix eyes. We've been doing stem cells so long that we used to actually take out fat from the belly and get stem cells from the fat. And we had a long process that we do here in the office and put them back in. My grandmother was 86 when we put about 60 million stem cells in her. It stopped her stage 4 kidney failure. It corrected her diabetes completely. She actually went hypoglycemic and had to go to the hospital with low blood sugar twice.
Wow.
She had to eat more sugar after that. Her eyes corrected almost to 20/20. Her pain was better. I mean, that's 60 million. Now we're sticking 500 million in patients that continue to grow in the body to multiple trillions. And it's a really, really, really cool process. We can make sure they get in the brain by doing a certain IV technique with them. So we can get these stem cells all over the body. Now it's a revolutionary process. We haven't talked about it much here. We've probably done about 50 treatments. I had a couple that was 89 and 90. Their first count was 1 and 2 times 10 to the 5th. A year later, the count was 10 and 11 times 10 to the 5th.
Wow.
So that's 100,000. A year later, it's over 1 million on their base count. So that's how we know that they're that active. So really cool process. We use them for our healing phase. A lot of our patients have had stem cells before they fix Lyme, and they're going to be temporary.
Right.
Lyme is so damaging, it's going to break stuff down again. So maybe one day, everybody that walks in the door, I'll say, I don't care what's wrong with you. Give me your blood. Let's just do stem cells. I think that day is coming. I mean, one day, but we still got to remove the most damaging bug in our history so that we can repair damage correctly. But
so what kind of things, what kind of things, I mean, you just listed some, I'm like, wow, what does it make you smarter? Like, what are all the things that stem cells can treat? Is it pretty much anything?
So stem cells are, I call them God's miracle molecules, because that's what made us in the womb. Stem cells, made us. They hit the genetics, and so they can turn into anything. We've had a handful of patients after their stem cell, within a few hours, start to develop fevers and chills that were not like none they've ever had before in their life. Like it's like the beginning of a flu, but worse, because the stem cells decided to go take care of some immune system issues.
Wow.
It doesn't happen often, and we know how to deal with it. But when we put them in the body, they're going to go where their innate mechanisms of looking for distress signals in the tissue. They're going to go wherever they need to go, and probably everywhere else.
Wow. So, and then you said if you have like an old injury that you're trying to heal, then you do that by like injecting them straight in. So you're kind of recreating the injury.
Yes, we create a signal. We're creating a platform. Even the Greek Olympians knew that if you had an old injury, they take a porcupine needle and jab it in there and recreate an injury signal, make some blood get around it because it's in the blood, it can heal it. So it's called proliferative therapy. And I have a couple of docs here that do the injections with the stem cells and some PRP before we put them in the vein, so we know they can go to those injury signals, and they're absolutely fantastic. We have patients that drop them in their eyes
I was just
Um,
gonna say, is that could like, will that fix my vision? I'm super blind. Will that fix my vision if I do some
I,
stem cells?
like I said, my 86-year-old grandmother, she died at 93, but she did not have kidney disease. She never went on dialysis. She didn't have diabetes at that point. Her mind was clear as a bell. She had a blood clot, we think, but they can do whatever they want to. If those
Wow.
tissues are sending a distress signal, if somebody wants to correct their eyes, we do it from in the vein and we let them drop them in. We do have patients that have had conditions like toxoplasmosis and other Lyme-like illnesses that have damaged their eyes. And we do fairly well with getting some corrected vision back, even for cataracts and what's the other, glaucoma.
Well,
Um,
that's something
yeah,
that it seems like, like, because I've always just kind of assumed, all right, at some point I'm going to have to get LASIK because I'm super blind. But I want, like, maybe people should start trying stem cells first and seeing if they can reverse, if it's just damage that they need to reverse, and that maybe people
yeah.
don't need to do LASIK anymore.
So I did my second one a couple of months ago. So I, I'll go back and see my eye doc and see if I'm having any corrected vision. I mean, I'd like to test them in any way possible. One of the purest ways to test them is for us to check your telomeres before your treatment and check your telomeres like 6 months later. We can
What is a
actually,
telomere?
the telomere is the part of the DNA of a cell that creates the aging of the cell. Remember, they preserve the telomere in the stem cells so it does not have an aging cycle. But we have telomeres that are shortening all the time. That's one reason we age. Our pituitary gets smaller. We make less growth hormone, which is our healing hormone. So we get smaller, shorter. We don't sleep as much. And the degeneration happens faster than we can repair.
Right.
And that's why we degenerate and end up with some kind of disease. We know that through animal studies, especially rat studies, because they've they have had these lines of rats for so long. They know when they're born, they know the day they're going to die if they do X to them. So if they put a stem cell in them somewhere in the middle and it repairs whatever, they have a longer life
Wow.
because
So
they just
that's really,
correctly
it's the
form
key
it.
to us all living to like 120. It's just doing some
120.
stem cells.
Sure, sure. If we want to live to 120 right now,
It's gonna be
yes,
fine. We can't stress too much.
at least we have that option, and we do have the Caribbean.
Right. Right. I mean, that's the reason really to live to 120, so you can go retire for a very long time
And
in
enjoy
the Caribbean.
your fruit of your labor. Yes.
Yes. Man, that's so, I it's something that I've definitely wanted to do at some point. I just haven't really been there yet, and it's very, very cool.
The world may not be able to stop you if when we get some stem cells in you.
I'll be so smart
You're
from all
just
the
going to run
holes in
off
my
and just,
brain.
yeah, like powder, just run through a field and just evaporate.
Yeah, that would be, that would be fine.
I meant to make that really simple, but it kind of got long. But the process is simple. We take your blood, we send it to the lab. They do their scientific. They remove the DNA, they make them embryonic-like. They preserve the telomeres, they expand them. They give us the count when they're done expanding them, so we know how many is there. Just crazy. And then they send them to us live, and we put them in a patient. Again,
So cool.
I'm just fortunate to have the technology like with the SOT. We're not doing anything that special as human practitioners, but we just have some good dynamics to help you heal. So
Well, I feel very, just fortunate that we have so many more options now. And it makes me, I think the best feeling is that I just don't feel like stressed out or scared of getting sick, and for such a long time, I was so nervous about getting bitten by a tick again or getting some sort of illness.
yeah,
But now, just knowing that our technology is where it's at, I don't have that fear anymore because I'm kind of just like, well, whatever the world has to throw at us, we can deal with it.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, it we need to be able to move through life without having fear of everything.
Right.
Part of our Lyme journey is to know we still need to be a part of the world, and we need to be normal, and we need to get back out there. We need to go for walks, and we need to hike a mountain. And, you know, if you get Lyme again, we're going to know it up front, and we're probably going to be able to take care of it fairly quickly without a lot of complication. I'm working with the 50% of the million each year that get mistreated and then end up with another disease from the master of all, the mimicker of all diseases, Borrelia burgdorferi.
Right.
So that's our population. But if you do get a new bite, I'm pretty confident we can take care of it up front without too much further problem, especially the kids running around. You can't stop your teenagers from, you know, wanting to go and hike and enjoy stuff.
That, you know, it was my dad. You know, he got a tick bite. He likes to go trail running, and it's his favorite activity. And he's always really careful because, you know, he saw what happened to me, and he's kind of freaked out by Lyme. And he called me a while ago. It's like, oh my gosh, I got a tick, and I just was like, well, call Dr. Sloan, and he did the antibiotic, and now he's been, you know, just he's been fine. He's not had any symptoms, and, you know, he's going to come in and obviously just kind of test and keep an eye on it, but, you know, it's doing fine.
Good. I guess I'll say this last thing. We have a lot of patients that want a Lyme SOT, but we can't find the information that we need to get their blood there. So we're not just SOT. I unfortunately I have to tell a lot of people that they can't have them, or that's why we do thorough tests, right? There's another vector disease that's a virus or pathogen that's acting like it, but there's a much easier treated. So regardless.
I mean, it just goes back to, you know, it's everybody is an individual, and you're, you know, even symptoms that might be similar for person to person, they might be caused by something different.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So, well, I feel like that's a really good place to end it. I think we went a little bit longer than we planned, but we just had so many things to talk about. And this was a good talk. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Absolutely. Yes. We will pray for everybody, and y'all pray for us here. The days are complicated around here, but we're doing some really good work for everybody. So
yeah,
I thank you, Maddie, for who you are and what you do, and we'll be talking to you a little bit.
Well, likewise. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and we hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.
Bye.